Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our Anamorphic Conversations panel. We have a very exciting lineup of guests here, and I'm really excited to dive into everything. So really quickly, in case you're not familiar with Atlas Lens Co., hello, we are hosting this panel. Atlas Lens Co. was founded in 2016 by Forrest Schultz and Dan Keynes with two goals in mind: to create the lenses they wanted to use for their own films, and to make anamorphic lenses more accessible to cinematographers everywhere. Headquartered in Glendale, California, we design and manufacture affordable, high-performance cinema lenses that deliver vintage anamorphic aesthetics with the conveniences of modern mechanical design. Our lenses are designed to empower innovative image makers to bring their visions to life. And we have a booth here at CamerImage where we'll be showing all of our lenses, including a brand new prototype. So I'll let you find out more if you want to stop by our booth and check it out. And very briefly, a little bit about me. My name is Miette Deschenes. I work in the marketing department here, and I run the Filmed on Atlas interview series where I interview cinematographers like I am about to do today. So enough about me and the company. I know what you're all here for, which is to hear from these amazing people. So let me introduce you to our panelists. And as I'm sure some of you may have noticed, originally we were supposed to have Hillary Spera here. Unfortunately, at the last minute, she couldn't make it. She's very sorry to miss the panel. And fortunately, Larkin Seiple stepped in, so thank you for joining us so last minute. Very appreciated. All right. So immediately to my left, we have Ashley Barron, ACS. Ashley is an award-winning director of photography. Her work spans the likes of Starz, Lionsgate, Disney, and Netflix, and her work on the TV show Dangerous Liaisons earned her a Gold Award from the Australian Cinematographers Society. She's one of 15 women to receive accreditation from the ACS. Thank you very much, Ashley, for joining us. We also have Larkin Seiple. Larkin is a cinematographer based in Los Angeles. Some of his notable projects include the Emmy Award-winning limited series Beef, Everything Everywhere All at Once, which won the Oscar for Best Picture, and the Childish Gambino music video for This Is America. He also very quickly has 2 nominations for this year's CamerImage for the Childish Gambino music video Littlefoot Bigfoot and the Zach Bryan music video 9 Ball. So congratulations. We are also joined by Catherine Goldschmidt, BSc. Catherine is known for her work on HBO's House of the Dragon, for which she was nominated for both the 2023 Emmy Award and the ASC Award for Outstanding Cinematography in a 1-hour television drama. In addition to her work on the upcoming 2nd season of HBO's The Last of Us, she was also the lead DP on the 12th season of Doctor Who, the Emmy-nominated show Dummy, and the BBC Amazon miniseries Chloe. She is also a founding member of Illuminatrix, a collective of female cinematographers in the UK. Thank you for joining us. All right, so my first question for all of you, whoever wants to take this first, how do you know if a project is anamorphic? However you want to do it.
So how do you know if a project is anamorphic? I think that you, first of all, obviously, you read the script and you see how you picture it. And you might just picture it one way or the other right away. And if you don't, then, and by the way, you is me. I'm going to speak for myself, then people can disagree. If I don't, then yeah, if I don't immediately have a feeling one way or the other, then I'll talk about it with the director. I will share references. Those references might take us one way or the other. We'll watch films. Those films might take us one way or the other. You know, there might be a certain genre we're trying to lean into. So that's usually how I go about that decision. What about you guys?
Hello. Anamorphic's a very strong flavor, and so whenever I read a script or think about a movie, it always kind of flashback to when I first started shooting, because like that was like shooting anamorphic was like ideal because it made your images feel otherworldly or special, or like that shitty music video you were doing in like a white-walled apartment looked a little more special. And so that's where my brain always goes. It also feels a little funnier. Granted, I used very like dramatic anamorphic lenses of distortion and vignetting and insane flares. So when I think about it now, it's almost like a callback, and I find myself distancing myself from it in a way. It's almost like I'm trying to prove that I can do something different. But then I keep the last 2 movies I've done have been anamorphic, but they're new types of anamorphic. They're not the dreamy types. And so when I think about it, it's kind of who I was in the past and who I am now, and then the script kind of brings out who I want to be in the future, and that's how I go about it. I know that sounds very abstract, but yeah.
I mean, I echo what both of you have said. I always found that anamorphic, there are so many flavors of anamorphic, as Larkin just said, that I just have always found that you can obviously choose the degree of anamorphic that you can go. I've always found that for me, I am very drawn to character-driven stories, and I find that the anamorphic format just tends to bring you into that experience of a character that little bit more for me, because of that kind of the separation between, with the widescreen, the separation between your character and the world, whilst also maintaining a contextual connection to that world. And so I feel like I agree that I'm always drawn to what the story needs, and that'll speak to you. But I do find that if you're not shooting an anamorphic that is taking away from the story because it's so anamorphic, then I think it can be really effective in the kind of stories that I'd like to tell. So I often put that aside when reading, so I can be objective when I'm reading a script, but I always go like, well, how is it not, I suppose. So, but yeah, that would be, but then obviously, yeah, to you guys' points, you talk to the director and then the network tells you, no, we don't like the widescreen and the rest of it. So, and I will say that, you know, I think that in certain, particularly with television where I've been for a while, you know, you always want to do something that allows you to tactilely connect that in ways that you don't often see, and I don't want to use a format to stand out, but I think that it can draw you into a story more when you feel that it's special or different, as you said as well, Larkin.
Amazing, thank you. So my next question for you all is, once you've decided your project is anamorphic, how do you approach lens tests? What does that process usually look like for you, and how do you go about choosing what lenses you want to use for that anamorphic project?
I mean, it's gosh. I mean, it's the usual, like I like to get out of a testing bay. I like to go out into the world. Obviously, I keep in mind all the elements that will affect what I'm shooting. You know, what are the technical, the logistical, practical elements of the shoot. And so as a result, I actually never, I record all the tests that I shoot. I have a hard drive from tests from God knows years and years ago, but I still shoot, I will always test even the same lens multiple times because each project requires different things for you to be looking at. So I'll go out and I'll put it through its paces, underexposed scenarios, overexposed, you know, like all over the place. Like obviously it's nice to have some, you know, fairy lights in the background and flash, whatever, but I really want to feel how is it actually going to be in the world. So, and every time is different. So it really depends on what the subject is or the project is.
Yeah, I think the real world is the best place to do it. I kind of think of it like test driving a car. If you just drive it around the parking lot, it's gonna just be whatever. But if you can actually like, put it on the freeway and press the gas, So if you can hopefully have like a set pre-built, or a lot of times we'll go to like a iconic, like we'll go and like rent a motel and bring in stand-ins, and we'll take a look at, you know, scenes of lamps, scenes with the windows blown out, scenes outside of flares, things like that. But my favorite thing to do is just take the director to the hotel or to even the camera house and just show them a bunch of lenses and just put like letters or numbers on them. And the last movie I did, I went through 10 lenses, and the director was like, honestly, I can't tell a difference. And then we threw on like a very specific anamorphic lens, and he was like, that looks like a movie. And I was like, well, we didn't talk about anamorphic. And he was like, if you want my opinion, that's what the movie is. And I was like, all right, we are shooting anamorphic.
I love that he asked me if you want my opinion.
No. No, and he was just going from his gut, and I think that's like that's how I like to pick lenses. And then you get into the fact that you're doing a movie with cars or something where you're realizing you're flaring the camera the whole time, or you're in tight spaces, and now you're thinking, oh, these are giant lenses, this was a mistake. I wish I had some smaller anamorphic glass. But I think the process starts hopefully with a very dumb conversation where someone says, that's it.
I love the hotel idea. I want to do that. That's great. Yeah, I mean, I agree with both of you. If you can take the lens out of the rental house, you should. If you can't, though, it's totally, you know, just bring your friends and put their face in front of it. Or I remember a mutual friend of ours, Todd, I've totally seen him put his own face, and like he's the only one there, like trying to pull focus. And just do it however you can, just so that it is a choice, basically, that it's not just, what's available, or what have I shot with before, what's comfortable, like to actually, you know, like Ashley said, be thinking about all the things that are going to go into the film, all the logistical things, all the technical things, and just the emotional things, and then see if somebody says, you know, like somebody, the director or you, says, you know, it's that one.
Yeah, I've definitely been I look at my face a lot in tests. It's the beauty about having that flip monitor or something like that. So you just like, don't be afraid to be your own subject.
I wanted to ask as well, sort of with lens tests, there's a lot of things you have to look for, right? And there's technical needs that you have for your project, and then there's also the sort of gut emotional response you might have to the way the image looks. So I'm curious how you might reconcile those two things when you're deciding what lenses to use, if maybe they're not lining up with each other, or what your gut instinct is when choosing what to prioritize.
We were actually just talking about this, but I did a movie called Wolves, and we shot with 2 sets of lenses, and we shot, the first set was really interesting and smoky and funky and detuned, and we were very excited about it. And we did the first 2 shots of the movie, and then we never touched those lenses again because the rest of the movie was way too difficult with those really sensitive and delicate lenses. It was like, oh, that street light, we need to turn that off, we need to flag it. Oh, those car headlights, we need to take them off. And all of a sudden, our whole game plan flopped because it became about the shot and not about the lens anymore. And so we kind of slowly just shifted away and had to kind of retune. And that happens even sometimes on TV shows. You'll get like 4 sets of lenses, and you're like, all right, each lens is for each character. And then you just love like set B, and now every character is set B, and you've given up on that concept, and you don't tell anyone about it. But it's fun to start there. But I think a big part is finding the lens you love, but also making sure it doesn't kind of disable you, I guess, or make your job harder, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess that's why it's, if somehow you can take 2 sets, or, you know, a backup. Or, I mean, often like with anamorphic, you know, I will bring wide spherical primes just because I know that you just can never get wide enough, or there's some sort of, you know, bending that's going to happen that somebody's going to hate, and it's going to be distracting because you're going to be in a tiny house, or you need the close focus. So I will always push for you know, just to have that sort of backup option. And yeah, hopefully I'm not shooting the whole thing suddenly on those on those 2 lenses instead, but yeah.
I mean, I echo. That's one of the things I actually liked about Atlas. So I just shot a new show for Netflix, and we went anamorphic. And one of the things that sold Atlas to us was that 21 mil, because you could use that on the 35, and we were in lots of small spaces. And we liked a bit of bends. That was good. But I mean, I think it's sort of, you don't want I don't know. I think it's your gut is story driven. So I think ultimately, as long as it's not completely, to your point, sort of reaming you in the, sort of to get there, that like, but I still think that your gut comes from the story. So therefore the tech can just sort of kind of fuck off basically, because that's what makes it, it's organic to it, right?
Have you ever been in a situation when you were deciding what lenses to use where you and the director maybe disagreed about what lenses to use or what the look should be? How do you navigate something like that where the vision is really not lining up?
I did a movie on film to make it more complicated, and I walked in and I was like spherical. I think it was like a stark drama, and director was like 4-perf anamorphic, and I was like, we're in like tiny rooms, and it was to me the wrong idea. And then the producer was like, we can't afford 4-perf anamorphic. So I'm like, I win, we get to shoot spherical 2-perf. And then the director made me do tests to shoot 3-perf anamorphic, which doesn't exist. And we found out, I think CSI Miami used it for flashbacks, and the director won, and we shot 3-perf anamorphic, and he was right. It ended up adding this kind of, it added a sense of scale to something that was very simple and mundane, and it was a movie about close-ups. It was basically a play that was adapted into a feature, and it made all their faces kind of stand out against this kind of shitty white background. And it was one of those things, I actually kind of like it when a director pushes you into a place that you're uncomfortable or where you think you're out of your depth, because I think you actually have to work harder and have to recognize why they're doing it. And you have to prove yourself. You have to be able to make it work under those constraints as opposed to just whining about it and saying it would be better my way. But yeah, it was a great experience. And yeah, don't shoot 3-perf anamorphic. Don't shoot it. Shoot 4-perf. It was a great experiment, but don't do it.
Don't do it. So it's never happened to me that I can recall that we disagreed about the lensing, but it has happened to me when I did Doctor Who. The director had never shot anamorphic before, and that show came with an anamorphic mandate, and so that was interesting to try to sort of like reverse engineer his way of thinking and how he was used to doing these, wides that moved into closes or close, like these sort of developing shots that we couldn't do anymore because of the close focus, and tried to sort of adapt his way to use the lenses. So it was a lot of diopters, and it was a lot of like not actually doing all that. He had to cut a little bit more, and we also did rely sometimes on the wider sphericals just to like get his approach in there, and so we compromised in that way, I guess.
I don't know, for better or worse, I don't argue with my directors, and I may be turning into the DP that tends to be working with the difficult ones. I don't know, for me the answer isn't about an argument, it's about just testing and seeing what's right for the project. And so, if similar to what you just said, but like I just think that, excuse me, that it's like, it's what's right for the story. And so, it's like the proof is in the pudding, basically. For me, it's like, how do I make this work? And oftentimes I'll reiterate what's been said, that it sort of makes you think outside, it leads to growth for you. So I don't like to being, like they say, I don't like being a Mexicant. It's like you just go, how do I make this happen for you? If y'all are happy with what is required, both financially or practically, to make this work, then great, let's do it. And so, because I have also found that when I have worked with directors where I've wondered, like, why are we doing it this way? You then see it in the edit and you go, oh, okay, right. Yeah, good choice.
That makes a lot of sense. I know we have some clips to share of some of your work. If this seems like a good time to go through those. Ashley, we can start with yours. Do you want to introduce the clip that you're going to play?
Sure. This was the Atlas panel, and the most recent thing that I shot is still being shot. Block 3 is shooting it, so I couldn't show anything from that. I showed one of my earliest commercials that I shot on Atlas, and I found that for me, starting to shoot Anamorphic was the thing that changed my career. And so I started in commercials in Australia, and this was one of the commercials that I shot. And yeah. Okay. All right, okay. That's the way you want to watch things inside. It's good. Yeah, I think this was like in 2016 or 2017, just around when it was started. Wow. Yeah. Oh, here we go. And how did you pick atlases for this? Probably at the time it was Greenpeace, so you sort of didn't want to detract from the message, you know, and it was at the time the kind of...
To stop the damage being done to our climate by coal, to rise above the corrupt systems and petty politics, and to those who put coal before Australian families. No more excuses. Change is coming. Will you be a part of it?
I don't know if we've achieved that yet, but yeah, yeah, I think we...
Authorised by Domro, Greenpeace Australia, Pacific, Sydney, spoken by Isabel Lucas.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think, I think, you know, to what you just earlier said, Miette, that like these were to be the anamorphics for the people who couldn't afford you know, like for the everyman to be able to use it. And Greenpeace, it wasn't a very big budget. You know, they're running off of donations half the time. But also I think it was because it's one of those lenses that at the time felt that it was amplifying the message, because everything else that was around that time for anything to do with Greenpeace or whatever was all kind of, you know, like people's sort of on a 5D, just branded content, and I really wanted to give it something powerful without taking away from it too, so I thought it was a nice sort of middle ground. But yeah, I know, like I said, I'm a big proponent of Anamorphic, because once I started shooting it, I started getting letters and things.
Well, thank you very much for sharing. Larkin, would you like to introduce your clip?
Yeah, this is part of a chase sequence from the movie Wolves, and it's kind of showcasing the need for lenses that don't flare a lot and lenses that can work for slow motion and kind of how they work with different backgrounds. I don't know if it's gonna play. There's like a kid in his underwear flipping through the air. It's a little silly. I can describe it to you. And it's from YouTube, and there's a dumb chicken in the corner, so don't judge it.
Can I ask, what lenses did you use for this scene?
So this is master anamorphics, and then we use the occasional, we mixed in 2 spherical shots in here as well for some of the visual effects. And it's combining the looks of Alexa and Phantom together.
Music videos.
This was a really excellent clip choice.
I wanted to spice it up just to make sure we didn't take it too seriously.
No, thank you.
Chicken adds to it, to be
It's gonna go on forever. You can kill it. He's just gonna keep running.
Well, thank you very much for sharing. Catherine, would you like to introduce your clip?
Sure. This is a trailer, I believe, also downloaded from the internet. House of the Dragon, season 2. This is the finale episode. So should I say what lenses we shot on?
Yeah, totally.
Cool. So season 2 was shot on the Alpha Anamorphics. We did also carry a set of Master Anamorphics, which we used sometimes for visual effects, sometimes just because the Alphas were pretty funky in places. And yeah, we cropped 2:1. The dragons were temperamental.
One of my next questions for you all too, actually, this is a good segue, is I was curious how working with anamorphic lenses interacts with shooting for VFX, and if you shoot for VFX differently when using anamorphic.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll just talk about my experience on this particular show. So first of all, season 1 was not anamorphic, so it was a big push to make the change to anamorphic for season 2, and VFX definitely had to be involved in that conversation because it is a very heavy VFX show. They were cool with it, but they definitely did want us to carry, this cleaner, more reliable set of masters with us. And for all the buck work, which is all the dragon riding stuff, initially they were like, yeah, that work, because that's all done. It was a weird sort of combination of it was essentially green screen, blue screen shooting, but it was done with LED screens, and so the frost drum tracked around, but it was blue, so we're never going to replace. But we used the LED screens for lighting purposes, sky reflections and armor and all that stuff. But anyway, the point was initially they were like, oh no, all of that work must be done on the masters. And then as we started shooting, we started being able to sneak in an alpha for a close-up here and there, and that wound up being fine. So to answer your question, I mean, I honestly will mostly defer, and because I want what I shoot to be able to, be useful to them, obviously, but I will also, push a little bit, so to make sure that what I'm being told is actually the case, and not just like, oh well, it's easier for us, and so anyway, so it's a back and forth and a collaboration basically.
I think it depends on your visual effects supervisor. The movie Wolves had 3,000 VFX shots, and they never gave us any pushback for shooting anamorphic. They asked that you maybe don't shoot things super shallow that are on green screen, because that rack is always going to look like ass, especially if you're racking between 2 people. And actually for that car hit scene, we did end up shooting the kid element. The kid shot on blue, and then all the plates are shot anamorphic in New York. And the kid we shot spherically, and it still blended in just as well. We just kind of softened the background later. But I don't think it's an issue. I sometimes think anamorphic makes visual effects blend in better if you have someone that's really good at comping and can shift the bokeh. You just got to shoot really good lens grids of all the stuff you're doing.
Cool, thank you. One of the other questions as well, I'm curious about how the distribution of your project, because I mean, you showed a lot of different types of projects. We've got TV, commercial, feature, how the distribution and where it's going to be played might affect your lens choice.
So I just shot, what I showed, that was online, and there was no conversation really about what it should be or shouldn't be. But with the Netflix show I just did, there was a lot of talking about, and this kind of harks back to like the technical versus, the sort of the emotional, but there was a lot of conversation about, we wanted to go anamorphic, and the execs were all, Netflix is generally like, if you want, just let's have a conversation. Tell us why you want to make it anamorphic. And you make your case, and as long as you're not just doing it for the pretty, then they're very open to it. And whereas the execs, there was all sorts of comments, whether it be like, if we go widescreen, we have to dress more, you know, and so it'll cost more money as a result, and all the rest of it. And my director was also an exec, so it was sort of, you know, it was interesting to watch that dynamic. But ultimately, what it came down to was obviously the worries about looking at everything on your phone or whatever. But ultimately, because it's a comedy, when we shot tests, which is bottom line what kind of gets anything over the line or under it, is that everyone actually thought the Anamorphic was funnier. And we showed 2-to-1 versus Anamorphic. And I was like, look, let's at least, you know, if we're not going to do widescreen, let's go with 2-to-1 because it's, you know, there's textural and there's a lot of story beats where we can play, blah, blah, blah. And so we did 2-to-1. And like, even the person that was through gritted teeth about worrying about the extra cost, the dressing, what we would shoot 360 anyway, were like, there was no question. So it was sort of that it was funnier. So I think that there is always that conversation. There's always that thing about watching on your phones and all the rest of it. But I think, I mean, you guys are in the TV category at the moment. This stuff shot in Anamorphic, and you know, like it's just about testing and having those conversations. But that's what was interesting for me, that I didn't have to do much after I showed them what it was like. So yeah.
And are you doing 239 in the end?
Yeah, we ended up being 239. Yeah, so the 2-to-1 wasn't even as. Yeah. So, and that was like, it was a unanimous Zoom call where it was like, we don't know why, but it's just funnier, and that's all that anyone cared about because it's a comedy. So it was like, yay.
I think Step Brothers was 235 as well. Step Brothers. Will Ferrell.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's a very silly comedy. Two brothers. They live together. Aspect ratio is really, especially in television, it's a big conversation. I did a TV show and we prepped for 239. And then the day before, like Anamorphic, day before, studio calls, and they're like, can't be 239, it has to be 21. And I was like, well, we've prepped it, we've built the sets, we have lighting that's lower than normal. And they were like, fine, we'll meet you halfway. And I was like, what does that mean?
Toot it.
And they were like, you could be 2.2. And I was like, that's not a real aspect ratio. That doesn't exist. But now it exists. If you watch Gaslit, it's 2.2. It's a brand new ratio.
You invented a ratio.
We invented it. It was some dude in a suit was like, we're gonna make history here. And yeah, and that's when I was kind of like, oh, there are no real rules to television.
How did you feel? Did it do anything?
I kind of like. I mean, I was happy. You're just the whole time you're like, is that little bit extra worth it? And I think it was. I mean, it's I mean, I love shooting 239, 235 Anamorphic. It's really fun for dialogue and for characters, and it can make sets look a lot better. But it changes how you frame. Everything is about the eye line. It's kind of, you're not doing that much bold framing, in my opinion. I think 16:9 is like an open challenge to like how much can you interpret the scene through the lensing and the frame. Like we get like a lot of headroom, or I started out with Hiro Murai, and so a lot of our early work was about trying to push the audience to look at a part of the frame by kind of cutting off half of it or kind of mixing it up. And we actually kind of stayed away from Anamorphic for that sole reason. But then I work with some of the newer directors, and you know, they've always talked about movies as 16:9, and then we'll do a test, and they're like, I can't help it. I take the performances differently. It feels like a real movie. But it depends where you're going. For movies, I love it. For TV, I'm kind of torn. I kind of want to fill the frame because people are already so distracted when they're watching television that I want to give them more of a chance by just, you know, give them the full 16:9, see what they do with it.
Yeah, it does seem like 2-to-1 has become a really popular ratio for streamers because yeah, it's not all the way wide, but it's not, you know, it's somehow a bit wider than 16:9. So I've encountered that a lot. Doctor Who was 2-to-1 Anamorphic crap. This obviously was as well. Even when we did it spherical season 1, 2-to-1. But I had another show come out this year, Anamorphic, and that was 239 Renegade Nell, and we shot that on Caldwell Chameleons, and that was Disney Plus, and I'm so actually grateful that they didn't bat an eye about that, because, you know, it's a Western, and, you know, you get to see, we were talking about it earlier, you get to see the whole lens and all of its, you know, and because we also shot that large format too. So it would have been a shame, I feel, to crop that one. So yeah, but again, it's kind of, yeah, again, push for what you think is right, and you might get it.
How do you feel about cropped anamorphic? I've tried it a couple times, and it always feels like there got to be a good metaphor somewhere. I don't know. It's like you're, I don't know, walking out the house with like half your clothes on. It doesn't feel complete.
No.
It feels a little.
Yeah, you're
little,
missing something.
Something's off.
Yes.
And like, so like framing up with that always felt a little funky, like I was never getting like the lens didn't snap appropriately in the corners.
Like crop like 2:1 or whatever.
Yeah, like
yeah.
You shoot.
Oh, yeah, totally. But I mean, for me, I think so much of a lens exists on the edges. You know, I mean, obviously, like this is where anamorphic sometimes can hurt you, especially if you're doing like multiple characters in one, and you know, the aberrations are so crazy on the size, no matter how much you stop down and all the rest of it. But yeah, it's sort of like. But that's where the character lies, in my opinion, in a lens. So it's like, and for me, again, like when I speak anamorphic, I'm always just thinking 239. Like, and I know that 2:1 still incorporates or sort of keeps the integrity of some of the texture, but I think 239, like there's so much you can do in terms of storytelling, in terms of composition and staging and all the rest of it, that I think that then what are we doing? Like, because that is what the format sort of gives you. Not sort of, that is what it gives you. So I don't like it. But I'll take it over, you know, there are many wonderful sphericals out there, but like I would rather that and still be able to give, as you say, the audience something that they can be distracted by instead of away from.
I'm going to try for 2.2 next time.
I know. How far could we take this? Like 2.22?
I'm curious because we've been talking about TV, and I know you've all shot a lot of different kinds of projects. And I'm curious how your approach to your cinematography changes when you're helming a project solo, like a feature or a music video, or leading on a TV show, versus if you're working on a show where there's rotating DPs and rotating directors. How does your approach change? Because those seem like very different working environments.
I mean, I'm happy to speak to that. House of the Dragon has, season 1 we had 5 DPs, season 2 we had 4 DPs, and I was not the lead either year. But that show is special because everybody does start prep together, and we spend the entire shooting in tandem with each other. And so for season 2, you know, it was led very much by PJ Dillon, who was the lead, but he got all the DPs in the room, all the directors who were interested, you know, to sit together to watch the lens tests he had shot, to talk about, you know, what was best for the show. So in that way, it felt like we were all sort of on the same page and collaborating, although it was ultimately his decision. I've definitely been, you know, second block, just handed the, you know, Doctor Who's the perfect example, actually. I was the lead, but because the showrunner had the season before fallen in love with shooting anamorphic, it was like, no, there's no chance. Even though, like I said before, my director was like, can we? We were pushing it, and the answer was no. So even in certain cases, you have to listen to the people who you're working with, and you have to, you know, talk through what everybody's trying to accomplish, really. But yeah, so that's been my experience with what you asked about.
I've done second unit or pickup shoots where it's like someone's shot a big movie and I'll come in and I'll do 2 weeks of shooting people on green screen and close-ups, hanging off of bridges or whatever. And that's just like, I don't know, that's different. That's just pure math, and it's like film school. It's wonderful. You just recreate the shots. But having done like a rotating part of a TV show is very different. I've done it before where I've handed the reins off. And I said, like, yeehaw, like, go have fun. Like, don't do what I did. Like, do what you want to do. Just don't, like, stick with these lenses, please. But you know, fulfill your destiny. Because you don't really want to just have someone tell you exactly what to do. You'd be like, all right, all the close-ups are 50s. Don't change it. Like, it's like...
Can you imagine?
I mean, sometimes a sneaky way, you know, if the lens package is set and the camera is set, then I start to think about, oh, I wonder if filtration is the way that I, you know, make it my own here. And often that's a seemingly overlooked because it's, you know, it's cheap to add, you know, some filters on. And so sometimes that's a little sneaky way if I don't feel like I'm loving everything about what's happening and I want to change it in some way. Done that before.
Yeah, I enjoy both. I've done both. I've done where I've come on to like block 3 of season 2, and you're just making the best of what's already very much built. Literally, like everything, all the sets are built. You can't add another couple of feet on outside the window of that set or anything like that. So, and then I've done shows where I've been the second half of a show. So Dangerous Liaisons, I was the second half, and that was very much like. Obviously, we were all hired because we had a sensibility that echoed what came, but the director was essentially like, we were just sort of, everyone was so busy with block 1 just getting it done. They were like, just go do it. And they enjoy what we got. So it's like, as long as we're not breaking anything, then why fix it, sort of thing for them. You know, like keep going with what you're doing. And the director wanted to do so many things that were different to block 1, but I'm like, if the producers are good, then good. I did Doctor Who this year, and that was really exciting because even though you are part of a machine and there's a pre-existing package and there's obviously you inherit the crew, is it anthology they call it? Every episode is its own thing and its own director and sometimes writer and all that. So new sets, all the rest of it, and you're informing the whole process. And you know, like, and the show that I just opened it, and we had 2 of the blocks. So there is always consideration as to, well, what are they going to need? You know, like I obviously I want what my director wants, and I want to build the world that it deserves. But equally, you're kind of going, I don't want to fuck anyone, you know, else. And like, you know, you're casting the crew, and that's who's going to stay with everybody too. So. Like I really enjoy obviously being at the helm. But with that comes a lot of pressure and you know, and so and sometimes it is nice just to come in and just be like, cool, how do I just make this, you know, not even better, because I don't want to come in and like just put the finger to who came before me. I want to stand on their shoulders. But there's a joy in both, and that's what I really enjoy about television, is because it is multi-block. You get to it's the one time that you get to all work together, you know, and there are more opportunities and progressions in telling a story. Like with Dangerous Liaisons, our story just progressed into a darker and darker world, and so you get to have fun with that, you know. And so I actually enjoy being one of the last blocks, or the last block, I should say, because you get to sort of take it somewhere. Where we were talking earlier that sometimes the first block, the first episode is just sort of telling the story and getting the audience in, and it's just very kind of procedural sometimes. So I love both, and both come with, like anything in life, a yin and yang of good and bad.
I wanted to ask, it seems like anamorphics are increasingly popular, like the sort of the pretty aberrations people love. They're popular in television now too, like a lot of TV shows use them, and I was just wondering what your take is on why they are becoming so popular, and if you're noticing any trends in what kind of lenses you're being asked to use.
Well, I'll just give you a specific example about why we switched to anamorphic for season 2, because it is interesting and it does have to do with technological trends. Season 1, we shot Alexa 65 as the A camera and Mini LF as B and C, and so we shot spherical, we shot DNAs. And when we were gearing up for season 2, the Alexa 35 had come out, and suddenly this sensor on this camera seemed very attractive to us. But we would be trading off the large format with the choice of using that camera, obviously, and so that's why anamorphic got introduced into the conversation. Really, was because people wanted to continue the look, they wanted to continue that, you know, shallow depth of field, etc. But so the question was how best to achieve that with this new camera, and that's why, you know, lots of tests were shot, both spherical and anamorphic. So I guess that's one example of why it could be popular, but I don't know if anybody else has some other recent experiences about that.
I think it goes in waves. Like when I in 2010 through 2015, like there was this huge surge, and this is before a lot of the anamorphic options were available. So Kawa Anamorphics was like the only affordable one you could get, and you had to make sure that it wasn't twisted and that it wasn't skewed diagonally because they were very old and funky. I think also people like lenses that force the camera to go through the process of squeezing and de-squeezing. It's kind of like a way to take the stink off of like a very sharp camera. And then now I don't know if much television actually doing 239. Like what you're talking about 239 is really exciting. And it's Netflix, which is like never in my head never been done. But I don't know. I also think it's different ages. I think the longer you shoot, you kind of, I don't want to say you become a curmudgeon, but you become more interested in like, oh, maybe I do want to see the set behind the actor's face. Maybe I don't want the walls to bend. Maybe I don't like flares anymore. And you become a little more purist about your image making.
But maybe the sets also get more
and the sets get better, hopefully. You know, the longer you shoot, you're doing...
No more white walls.
Yeah, you're doing, you're like Deakins. You can shoot on the 16 because everything looks amazing behind the actor. And I think that's part of the process. I think the fun part about anamorphics is I think everyone sometimes has that journey in them that they're just going to maybe shoot anamorphic for like 2 years straight, and then they're going to try something out, and then they're going to come back to it. I like the middle ground now. Like that's why I'm liking lenses closer to the master anamorphics, where you still get some really interesting bokeh, but you don't get distortion. I also like there's a lot more flare options now, as opposed to like some of the hard lines that cross it, like the C series or some of the beautiful Atlas, flares. It's kind of nice to have more controlled flares at the same time, specifically if you're doing a lot of stunts or car work or things like that. But there's a lot more opportunities now to actually play with anamorphics, because for so long it was like, you got Panavision and you got like Hawk, and then that was it. I mean, and some cool Claremont stuff, but they're no longer around.
Oh, yeah. I think. Look, I honestly, when you said that, I was like, "Is everyone in love with anamorphic?" Like, I haven't. Like I said, I started in commercials in Australia, and it was always anamorphic, and I think it was just the way people could make something feel cinematic, as everyone called it, and so. And then going into narrative, it's always, at first it was about what serves the story, and oftentimes anamorphic didn't, because it was just the anamorphic look rather than telling the story. And then networks and the question you raised earlier. So I think it's about like when people do just want something different. So if something is this is my interpretation, I actually don't know, but like, if you keep looking at the same thing for ages, it's like, how long did we have the Bradford Young look, which I really love and I hope I can shoot for the rest of my life. But it's like, that kind of really beautiful silky blacks, and everything was like just soft, and then after a while people go, what can we do with Hartley? There's always a reaction to something, it's like 80s and then the 90s, and so I think maybe if it is it an answer to what came before and people want to try something else? Yeah, question back.
That makes sense. I could be biased too. I work for an anamorphic lens company, so everyone is always telling me they love anamorphics, but it could be the crowd that we're meeting. I guess sort of on the flip side of that, what are some consistent challenges that you face when working with anamorphics?
That hasn't been mentioned already?
I mean, I think shooting wide open is always fun with them, but if you have remotely a flare, then you can get, a circle or a vignette. That's hard to get rid of it. And if you realize that it's essential for the scene that you're looking at that light and you don't have the ability to stop down, you're kind of in trouble, which is when you would maybe switch to a different set or to spherical. I mean, really, that's all the flaws that you have to just be aware of, that you love, but you're also going to potentially bone you in the end.
Yeah, and it's stuff like, for us, for the show that I just did, that we tested all the Atlas lenses that we had. And there was a 25 and a 21, and like, we kept getting people just to stand here and then move over a little and move over a little, and and we knew we'd have a lot of different characters or different things that we wouldn't want to fall off weirdly. That like, that someone would go, their eye's not in focus. So, but like, we'd found certain lenses just over here at this distance that was, you know, it was just not anything you control out in the real world. So we had to exchange the focal length, or, you know, whatever. So I think it is that thing that what we love about them is what can be the gotcha that can really screw you. And it also depends on like what you're shooting, because like if you're shooting on a project that's very mobile, lots of locations, do you have a DIT that's staring just at the image all day long, or do you just have a data manager? Because you know, like, it's stuff like this that you have to be very mindful of making sure that the flaws that you love you can control, and sometimes you can't. So that's a consideration too. Well, that's the technical side, right?
Also, I think focus is a big challenge of anamorphics. Minimum focus. On everything everywhere, the directors learned that the 55 was a macro focus. So all of a sudden, every shot was like, what if it was a 55? We can just push in. We don't have to use a diopter. We can go faster.
We can go faster.
Yeah, and so that became a part of the look, was the necessity to not have to throw a diopter in. So that kind of defined it.
Yeah. For me, the two things are always just close focus and how wide can you get. My director on House of the Dragon loves a wide angle lens. So yeah, so we did carry a 16 spherical and an 18 spherical just to be able to satisfy that.
Thank you. I think now seems like a good time to open up the floor for some audience questions, if you all have some. We've gone. Hello.
Hello, everybody.
Still awake.
Yeah, that's right. Still with us.
Ladies first.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not from the camera department. I'm doing production design. And I was wondering, how is the best workflow for you to work with a production designer, especially when you're using anamorphic lenses, like when you have to deal with these flaws like distortion or lens flares? And yeah, what's the best way to work with a production designer for you?
I mean, so anyway, I'll keep using this as an example, because real world examples I feel like are more interesting than generalizations. Like House of the Dragon, nothing changed between season 1 and season 2, even though we went from spherical to anamorphic as far as my relationship with the production designer. And so yeah, we changed nothing about our working relationship. So I don't know if that's a helpful thing to say, but yeah, I think it's so much more, as far as our relationship goes, about yeah. I mean, I think you can take the lens out of it. Honestly, is my opinion, because I think whatever you put there, whatever the set is like, you know, the conversations we're having are just, you know, as far as I'm concerned, are about, you know, where can the light come from in this set, you know, where can I put the camera, and that doesn't really change. I mean, I guess if you were building me a super tiny set, and you know, and we wanted to shoot wider and we had bendy lenses, you know, maybe we would talk about, you know, having a back door in the back, or you know. But yeah, so that's how I would answer that question.
For me, the one working with a production designer in anamorphic, or shooting 239 in general, it really just affects the location scouts. Because we'll get to the location and then there'll be like a big conversation about the floor, the ceiling, and then you have to be like, guys, we're not going to see the floor or the ceiling. We're just going to see the walls. We should be talking about the walls and those windows. You know, unless you're doing like a dramatic, you know, thrilling up shot or something, you know. But in general, you are shooting people against walls, especially if you're doing 235, where you don't really have the ability to do a lot of dramatic vertical framing. So that's what changes it for me. And then the opposite happens when we're not shooting anamorphic, is the ceiling, and it becomes much more of a player when we talk about what places we like and what we want to choose to shoot at.
Yeah, I echo that. I think it's all. I've not worked with any production designer who was against the plan. You know, like what like oftentimes it's driven by the director, and you know, everyone kind of wants to appease that as well. And I've learned that to your earlier point, Katie, that like when you have good sets, you want to be able to show them, you know, so you want to have that that respect for each other. And so I don't know that there are conversations that, for me, it's more about the conversations between a production designer and myself are less to do with the format and more just like the size, of the set that you build. Like, you know, sometimes production designers want to build something that looks like the real thing, and I'm like, but I can't cover people on a 35mm lens. There's 8 of people in this tiny room, just because it looks like what the actual set would look like. Do you know what I mean? Or the actual location would. So things like that, but they're all just, you come in peace and you have these conversations, and when you go on location scouts, you take photos in that aspect ratio so that everyone can talk about it in a way that's not sort of theoretical. And I've had directors who come in on their iPhones just taking photos with their, like, without Artemis or whatever, and so you're just like going, can you just send them to me so I can crop them, because you're falling in love with all this, and then you know. So it's like, again, I don't know that just because Anamorphic that my conversations with the production designer change. Yeah. That's the question.
So I'd have a question also regarding television, because a lot of television in the world, even though 2.2 sounds cool, I guess. It still has to fall into 16:9 very often. Like, that's the technical standard that the broadcast station wants to have. And there's becoming the increasing possibility to shoot 1.3 by or other squeeze factors than 2 by, so that you could go from a 4:3 sensor directly to 16:9. Would you prefer that now that's becoming more and more of an option, or would you prefer to have the usual 2:39 image and then cut off the sides?
You're saying you're having horizontal bars versus vertical bars, or
no?
You're talking about the squeeze factor.
I'm talking about the squeeze factor.
Yeah.
So the
like
the one would
1.3
land
versus
at
times
16:9 directly. Okay. So then you would not have to cut it, but it's a different picture, like the flares behave differently.
Well, the sensors are also different sizes too. So even when I do shoot two times, like depending on which sensor I'm on, there's a ton more left over. If you shoot 3-perf anamorphic, there's an insane amount of imagery left over.
What is that even? Would have been my second question. What's 3-perf?
That was us taking anamorphic, and normally it's for 4-perf, but we shot on 3-perf, so we're literally, you have an image that's like, it feels like it's almost double wide, and you're just cutting out the middle, so it's not quite 16mm anamorphic, and it's not quite 35 anamorphic. But with there's always something left over. I don't know. I haven't played with the 1.3 squeezes a lot. Have you guys?
No, well, the Caldwell's was 1.8, I think, but we were finishing in 239, so I haven't used it for the purpose that you're talking about. I mean, I think if somebody, or if I was in a situation where, I knew we needed to finish 16:9, and I knew we wanted to shoot anamorphic, then I would probably just make that decision by going through all the testing and, you know, and seeing who liked what the best. But, you know, it is a good suggestion.
I'm actually curious to see like a more intense squeeze, like that, like a 3 or a 4. I mean, it probably looks terrible, but I would want to know. I feel like that is like, how compressed can we make it, and then how can we de-squeeze it?
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm like, that's fine.
Fun fact, by the way, our Mercury lenses are 1.5 squeeze, so we have options if anyone's interested.
Yeah, but doesn't that affect, and like, this goes back to the conversation about networks and like what display you're looking at on and all that kind of thing, that even for someone as in love with anamorphic as me, there's a point at which I'm like, no one can see this, right? Like, because it's so squeezed, in my opinion, right? Like on a small display.
Yeah, I guess it depends also what stop you're at too, and a couple other factors.
Sure.
But like, I don't know. I've only done it 2 times.
We should do like a squeeze off and just see.
The fact that the you know, there's different that you can dial in what you're de-squeezing to in the camera. I played with that on just a feature I wrapped last week, just because it was for, a very special case, dreamy point of view, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, we took what should have been a 2 times D-squeeze, and we just D-squeezed it 1.3 times or something, and that did a sort of like stretchy, weird, out of focusy. Anyway, so that's fun to play with too.
Can I just answer one more thing to your earlier question about production design? I think if your director can inform how they plan to cover things, but a big conversation would actually be about how much is it going to be a 360 set versus very composed, that kind of thing. Like the thing that I just shot was a lot of the things I recently shot have been very 360, and so it's sort of like the production designer needs to be very aware that like everything is nothing is off limits. Whereas if you're working with somebody who wants very precise, very this and that, like you kind of want to. You just want to give kind of an idea for the production designer as to what kind of pen to play within in terms of what will be seen and what not, and what kind of director you're working with. Will they say that won't be seen on the day they go, can we pan and do that now instead? So, but there are other conversations that you do need to have, which the format can inform as well.
Any other questions?
I have a question for Larkin. How did you shoot the night scenes in Wolf? Because they look amazingly naturalistic.
For Wolves, the Naked Boy one, yep. We used natural light. We used street lights, and we shot on Alexa 35, and we did the whole thing at 2560 ISO. The extended range. We did a bunch of tests, and we couldn't. Apparently, everyone tells me different, but apparently it's just software that denoises it. It's not like, it literally is just really noisy footage, and the camera just makes it good. Which I think is great. It's like why do science? We just clean it up. But it was great, and then we ended up doing a lot of wide open work, like around a 2. And what we would do is we would, we'd mount some small lights onto the car. But a lot of it was just kind of hiding condors around buildings and just poking out just a little mover, just a little tiny dot of light. So you may, if you freeze frame it, you'll see the lights lighting some of the sets. But in general, they're kind of a blur and you miss it. A lot of it was actually turning off lights, because New York is just like, it's plastered in grotesque light. And so a lot of it was just choosing to pick what side of the street we wanted the key from, and then just slowly turning them off.
I think I had seen a hand go up over here, unless did you have a follow-up?
Hello, yes. I had a question about filtration. When you're trying to match a spherical and anamorphic, are you adding in anything to help with that, or are you going to give away any trade secrets?
They do make a set of spherical anamorphics called, which I think more people should make, Hawk Minis, and literally the iris is an oval, and so you get a oval bokeh, and that's been great for a lot of times. I only use them for like if you're shooting high speed, and some of the cameras can't do like the full 4:3 at high speed, so you have to go to 16:9 mode, and that's where you would swap to something like that. But that's the type of lens I'm very interested in. I only think there's one right now, but they're pretty funky, and they fall apart wide open. Like a real anamorphic, they just become terrible.
I mean, the way that I've combined is similar to what Katie's described in terms of like he'll use a spherical wide, and so usually that's more of like a post thing where you just add a little bit of a bend, just to let it go. But yeah, I've not actually used filtration to match. There's all these like. The filters, like flare filters,
like
and all that.
Blue streak filter. Or
yeah, that's right. Yeah. But I would love to do that. I just like.
Yeah, I've never used it for that reason. I mean, the the primes we took were master primes, so it was kind of the same family as the master anamorphics. So I would pick, I would pick a wide lens that I thought would maybe, fit in the same vein, if that's what I was trying to match for. Other instances where I've had to mix spherical and anamorphic, on Renegade now, we were doing this like big carriage chase scene, and I just needed a 12:1 to hose it down, basically. So we did that, but no filtration there. So in post, a little bit of like edge softening maybe, and a little bit of post diffusion. I think if it's warranted, can go a long way. You match it later is what I do.
Yeah, I think post is the answer to matching. It's almost they want the pristine image, but it's getting crazy right now. Did anyone see it? David Fincher's last movie, The Killer, is spherical, like flat. I think they were like, as I'm blanking on it. But then in post he added anamorphic distortion. But like he adds flares, which people have done before, but he's actively like bending doorways, and I was just like baffled and excited by it. But apparently, like it's
same with Mindhunter.
Yeah, you can just.
He bends to taste, though.
Right? Yeah, he bends to taste, and that's the sort of, he just loves to control everything. So like, and Eric actually said that like one of my favorite bits about that movie was that handheld sequence where they like fought for like 20 minutes through houses and streets and all that. That was all post handheld. It's just all that is, and no wonder it felt like a Fincher handheld movie. Like,
you don't have to do anything on set anymore. You just do it all later.
He's the beginner of AI. That's his fault.
Any other questions?
Does he need the mic?
So with so many anamorphic alternatives, filters and glass, do you think it has a long future?
Hasn't died yet. And these guys are coming out with more and more lenses, so... No, for me, I would think that it, like anything else, it should just be a tool, right? So, like, just get more tools for your toolbox and just see what works for your next project. Nothing has to die.
I think it does have a future because of you can kind of see it by the shift of, a lot of cameras went large format. And a lot of that I think was due to a 4K demand from streamers. But then as soon as they were able to do 4K at like a normal, Super 35 chip, they went right back to it so that you could use a plethora of lenses that you were used to using from before. And a lot of that is the 4.3 for anamorphic. I think it's always going to be in fashion because it's, right now we just have really spherical and anamorphic, unless I'm missing another one. So I think always having a counterpart is going to, someone's going to want a different option, I believe. Yeah. I think they can push it in different. I remember someone did like a vertical anamorphic where they tilted the camera and they squeezed it differently to make a 4.3 image. People are trying some weird stuff right now, and I think that's hopefully the future.
I'm intrigued.
I think squeezing. We should make a squeezing conference. And
that's a squeeze off, I tell you. And it just shows, like, even just during this CamerImage, I got emails from various vendors going like, "Come check out our new anamorphics." So I think it doesn't go away. And I also think like it's generational. Like a few of us grew up during certain eras where anamorphic, are the movies we watched really stay with us, and then, the next generation might not be, but everything always comes around. Like how many people are now wearing stuff from the 90s, and I'm just like, that's retro. So it's just sort of, I think that just we're human nature is to be cyclical in some sense, in some ways.
Have any of you shot vertical anamorphic?
I only heard of. One famous cinematographer told me about it, but I don't think it got released because he wasn't happy with the movie, and so The
cinematographer control the release if they don't like something?
No, I think they can by walking off the job, which is what happened.
Oh, I see. They're not credited.
Yeah, the movie just didn't get finished, is what happened.
I see. That's the only power.
Have you found that, because I know some people have used our lenses shooting vertical anamorphic to have like social media deliverables. Is that something that you find people are asking of you when you're shooting projects to frame them to be cropped for social media, or is that because that seems like it's a growingly common thing?
Only in commercials, in my experience, which I've not been in for a couple of years because of TV.
Yeah, I mean every commercial, frame for social, everything. And then you talk about the 30, and they're like, yeah, but they just care about what's on Instagram. So now, so what? Yeah, I mean, we still, you just basically shoot full sensor, and then you can put up guidelines sometimes. We used to turn the camera sideways, but we're all tired of that, and so we're just shooting kind of full chip, and then just kind of figuring it out with a crosshair.
I don't really have anything else to add.
That's completely fine.
Just picking up my mic. I mean, if we really want to talk about multiple aspect ratios, I had a whole experience shooting for Quibi, which, if anybody remembers what that is, but so that was weird because that was a narrative project that had to be framed in both 16:9 and 9:16 at once. But vertical anamorphic did not come to mind. But if anybody comes asking, I'll try it out.
Can I ask what that was like, having to frame for two such vastly different aspect ratios at the same time?
Yes, it was challenging. And actually everybody, including the production designer, the sound department, obviously my operators, like everybody was like, wait, what are we doing? So yeah, but we did what you're saying. We framed for a square basically, so that we could take the 9:16 and the 16:9, and they would roughly be the same. At least a medium shot was a medium shot instead of like doing some horrible crop in. But yeah, suddenly everybody who previously might not have been worried about the floor, we saw the floor a lot. Saw the floor a lot.
That's so interesting. Thank you for sharing.
And lots of center punching, obviously. Lots of center punching.
Do you have another question?
Hello.
Oh, yes, you first.
My question for you is, or for all of you, what has been your favorite movie or show that you've shot so far?
You just want to give that one some thought, but
Like your children, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, like the one you just finished is sort of the one that like comes immediately to mind, and because with this is for me, I won't speak for anyone else. Every new project, you're obviously trying something different and pushing yourself in new ways, and you're building on the next one and the next one. So in a way, it's like the one I just finished is maybe. But it also might just be I remember it the best.
It's like the like all my friends who've had children, they say they forget the pain as soon as the childbirth is over. So it's like, yeah, the last movie was great. I mean, for me, I actually find that distance helps me, like, because it's like coming out of, you're all sort of with shrapnel in you and all that after a project, But I think also like the more, I don't know, maybe it's like clothes, Sometimes you look at stuff and you're like, I'll never wear that again. You look back and you're like, actually, I will wear it again. So it's like my relationship to everything changes for different reasons based on what happened and what it led to as well. There's been some that I really disliked the experience of, but it was one of the most, not even just like lauded, but like people really appreciated it, so you just sort of forget the pain and go, well, it was worth it for someone's happiness out there, So yeah, so I think I will probably say usually the ones that have been around for a little while that I've sat with them, yeah.
I guess, yeah, it's kind of like I don't know, speed bumps behind you. I don't know. For me, like when I made Swiss Army Man, it was like a 20-day shoot in 3 different cities, and it was like we didn't sleep, and it was painful, but very fun and very stupid. It was like the fact that we finished the movie was beyond exciting, and I was really proud of that. Yeah, we shot most of it in a forest, and more importantly, we picked a shoot in an active river. That's where we decided. So you were just your ankle deep in cold water the whole day, but. And then the next movie was, I think, Everything Everywhere was also the same directors, as crazy of an idea. and that was really exciting but painful. And then the last movie I did, which was last summer, I kind of got to dive back into something where you're kind of in over your head, and you can, if you can kind of come out of it. I don't know. I think trauma. I think that's how you pick your favorite movies. Trauma.
Trauma bonding. But also, I think like for me, you know, I think it also is about what you're proudest of. What is it about what is it about it that you're proudest of? You know, like so. For me, I remember for a long time looking at my work, just like, you know, in my early years of my career, where I just look at everyone else and be like, why am I not there yet, you know, in my opinion? And then you start shooting things or you achieve something lighting-wise that you're just like, finally, I feel like I'm, you know, proving something to myself, let alone anybody else, you know, and I think that can be really great.
All right, I see we have a question down here.
Hello, thank you very much for all your talk. Very interesting. I would like to ask you about particular project. What difficult situation you had with anamorphic lenses in particular project, like where you had like really problems and you can share how you were solving it. Like in one project, what was really big headache and maybe it's solved very nicely in the end. And also how you usually combine anamorphic lens with another lens, how you choose it, if you need to combine them together, like on what you based or, yeah, this is the question. Thank you.
I think what we haven't talked about yet. I mean, combining it's about testing and seeing what. So like lens choices is all about what's important for the story, and then for you know, your technical reasons, and so finding the lenses that mix like well in that respect. For me, I was saying earlier that like when I tested the Atlas lenses from my previous project, that I found that certain focal lengths, the focus would just be completely off on certain, you know, certain parts of the frame, and so therefore I swapped out some lenses as a result, or, you know, that was the way that I chose how to match them up. On Dangerous Liaisons, we didn't do anamorphic, but we second block is what, like the second half is what I shot, so I inherited the K35s, but we wanted to go a bit wider than some of the lenses that we had, and my director he loved the 40mm and the 65mm, so it was all through tests to see what fit together, and you know how much would be a ball ache in the grade. As for lenses that had issues and how we solved them, that'll be my answer in terms of the focus issues. And yeah, trying to think of anything else that I haven't mentioned yet. I'll let you guys answer.
They usually just stop down if you can, and if you can't, swap in a spherical and hope no one notices.
Yeah, I hate having to stop down, because it's like the stop is a creative choice and a story choice. So like, I just like kills me to do it. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything that really hit us that, yeah, I mean, like things like there was and I don't know if this was an Atlas thing or whatever, but like we did, or whether it was an extended ISO thing, but like on the job that I just did, we shot Atlas and we were shooting in a forest at night, 2560 extended on the Alexa 35, and all of the highlights, like my moon or whatever, I had this like pink aberration around a lot of it, and I actually noticed that on the K35s when I shot Dangerous as well, where around the candles, because it was a period piece, wide open, there were all these pink, like magenta aberrations as well, and that forced me to stop down. Luckily for what I was doing, I mean, the effects or the grade can fix it, but also I really enjoyed, for me it was a bit of a supernatural moment anyway, so it kind of worked. But yeah, it's sort of, I don't know, it's interesting, just on a complete sidestep, but I was looking through footage recently for some of these panels, and stuff that like at the time when you shoot it and you're like, this is such a mistake and this doesn't feel like real moonlight or whatever, when you look back you're like, it's actually the fact that it is a mistake that makes it look like, makes you connect with it. So I actually think sometimes it's better not to allow you to fix your mistakes. It's like sometimes it's better that you're not allowed to delete the photo that you took because you're deleting it for the wrong reasons, you know, so sometimes it's okay to make mistakes.
Thank you so much.
All right, I think we have time for one last question, if we've got anyone.
If I may ask the question off topic, I'll use my chance to talk to experienced cinematographers. how much do you actually determine and influence the look, the visual language of the projects that you're working on?
Hopefully a lot. Hopefully that's why we get hired. Yeah, I mean, I can't, I don't know. I sort of can't imagine wanting to do this job if I couldn't have an impact. And, you know, and I also think even if I tried really hard to have no impact, that would be impossible also, because it's just how you see the world, how you want to light things, how you want to frame things. It just all has, it has an impact. That's I think the whole purpose of what we're doing, is my opinion.
Yeah, and I find that the times where I've found myself losing my voice for various reasons, dynamics, politics, whatever it might be, it's very debilitating, and you do kind of go like you as a result tend to lose your voice, because you kind of, if you don't have an opinion, then why are you there? So I really try very hard to find collaborators, if I can help it, that will, even within the machine that working in high-end TV, movies, whatever it might become, that even within that you can find a partnership, that you can have a voice. And I think that ultimately collaborators still want, even the most controlling individuals on some level still wants to be questioned, you know, even if it makes them just feel better about their opinion. But it's like, I think that it's like I actually don't find people do just want yes men or women, you know. So I think it's and that is applied to everything, whether you're leading a show or whether you're picking up on another block. Like, I think it's really important to have a creative voice. Yeah, even if it's for your own sanity.
I know there are some DPs out there that will they're like, give me the shot list, I will light it, we'll figure out what you want to look like, I will execute it. But to me, like, the shot structure is like the juice. That's the best part of the movie making. And that's actually, to me, the only unique thing about filmmaking, because anyone can take a photo, anyone can build a set, anyone can act in a play. It's us putting images in sequence that makes filmmaking unique. And so the edit or the shot structure, to me, is the most interesting part of it. And that's usually, like, when I interview, those are the first questions I have, is kind of, how do you see it cut? What's the rhythm? Are we doing most of blocking? Is there, like, what is the theme throughout the film? Does it evolve? And that's where you get to be the most, you can get to be really pretentious, and that's kind of like the dreamy part of prep for me, is really talking about the possibility of how these scenes could cut. You know, and it could be great, and you could be ballsy, and then you see the edit, and it's just the 2 close-ups that you did. But it's that, to me, is, I don't know, I think that's what I hope directors look at. I hope when they look at my body of work, they're looking at, you know, besides the beautiful anamorphic flares and lovely lighting, they're looking at the shot structure and the storytelling of it, and that's who they're kind of choosing as, like, their allies are going into battle, someone that's going to fight them on whether they need the close-up, or if we should do it all with blocking, or if we should do 2 cameras. You know, I think the last movie I did, director was like, never 2 cameras, never. And then he watched one performance of the actors rehearsing, and he was like, 2 cameras, cross-shooting. It was the only time we did it in the movie, but he watched the first rehearsal, and he was like, I'm gonna hate myself if we don't change our concepts up. But you know, that is the best part, and I hope that, and I think every DP has a very different journey with that too, because sometimes you focus a lot more on lighting and the design and how to pull off shots, and some movies you focus entirely on how it's going to cut. I mean, Jordan Willis famously would interrogate his directors. He would sit down with them and go through every shot. He wouldn't tell them how to do the movie, but he'd be like, why?
Why?
Tell me exactly why you want to put the camera there and point it there, you know, until the conversation came out. Yeah.
Well, I think that's how you can also lead, by, like, you can also suggest and be creative by knowing the why, right, as well. Like, that's what, like, Russell's Katie, AFIers, you know, that's what we're taught, is the why. But I also, talking about allies, like, I think for me, I find that, especially when you're working in TV and really fast schedules and turnarounds, that kind of thing, that, like, you know, I have found myself, especially earlier on in my career, where it's like you're just trying to make your day and you're trying to light it. So a lot of the shot structure, as Larkin described it, is left up to the director and sometimes the operator. And I find that when you have allies that can help you, when you can rely on people like, say, like your gaffer to light the way that you trust that they will for you in the show, that you can then be part of those conversations rather than be that kind of the lighting camera person while there is, you know, someone else establishing the shot structure. So I think it's also about the crew that you have that allows you to be able to not think about just the lighting.
I mean, I think also how many cameras does change that. Yeah.
How many did you have? Like,
yeah. So yeah, both HBO shows are 3-camera shows. So it's like you have to, at a certain point, you're letting some of that lovely shot structure idea go. But you still make your impact in other ways, you know. Yeah. So that's the thing. You have to figure out which is the way you're going to imprint and where and how.
Or say no to the job if you feel like it's not gonna.
Yeah. If you hate 3 cameras, then don't do HBO shows.
Just if it's possible to ask one last question very fast, which is your relationship with the First AC, and if they are involved somehow in the process of lens choice?
Bizarrely enough, my relationship with my DIT is actually, I have like a wonderful DIT, and we will get nerdy about lensing together because we're kind of staring at the monitor the whole time when we're talking about continuity and texture, and they're kind of like, you know, like the quarterback on the bench, the second string. They've been obsessing over the image with you. And so I end up having more conversations with them during the shoot. But during prep, the first we'll have more conversations with, because they're trying to problem solve, you know, which lenses react to which focus marks, which lenses fall apart, which lenses flare, how do they work on the build. So it's a kind of a different relationship. Sometimes the aesthetic relationship with lenses comes with the DIT. And then sometimes the execution relationship comes with the first, because we're going to be in the trenches and they may push to have a better lens system that can rock and roll because they know we're shooting nights and we're kind of stealing locations or something.
Yeah, I agree. And sometimes, you know, you have that whole like, well, this will be an easier build, so therefore could we use this? I'm like, don't worry, we won't use the Sony Venice, you know, like. But I think that, I mean, for me, I really like, I really love my collaborators to be creative allies, you know, like. I watched on Dangerous Liaisons. We worked so it was myself, an English director who's based in LA, and then we shot in Czech Republic, all over Czech Republic, with like guns of crew. There were stellar, but our focus puller couldn't understand, was very, very little English, you know, just to even get the kit to where it needed to be, let alone to know what the script was about, to know when to pull focus to what, you know. And so my director would actually sit next to him and like just, you know, respectfully tap him every time he needed to roll between the actors. And that was story driven. And so for me, I really do enjoy working with First ACs, gaffers, but I say with First AC, that's someone who's reading the script, who's wondering not only just about like, how does the story inform the technical as well? And when you're like, for example, when you're opening a series, there are already scripts that exist. Sometimes when you're shooting other blocks, they don't yet until the day you shoot. But like, I find that at least someone who's read the script and is sort of thinking on a creative level, and not just this is how it's going to feel in the trenches, is important as well. And I think that it also empowers them to feel like they're not just a cog in the machine that's showing up and, you know, just playing with a wheel, that they're actually a creative force with you.
I hired my first AC because he was singing along to the lyrics of a music video we were shooting. There's like a video of him just vibing and pulling focus. And I was like, all right, that's the guy.
Just feel the focus go with it. That's brilliant. Good question.
All right, well, that's all we have time for.
This is a very keen question.
Yes.
She's had her hand up the whole time, yeah. All right.
The question was, what was our favorite setup from the last project?
Well, I can't show my last project. We were shot on the Atlas Anamorphics. But my favorite was the thing that led me to the most amount of sleepless nights. I had a night forest scene that was part of, I won't give away too much, but it was part of our first episode, so it was a lot. And it was towards the end, so it's one of those you're only as good as your last days kind of vibes. And so I was like, and I've never done that before, and the size of it. So, and I think it worked out quite well. But yeah, I loved it just, even if it was really liberating to stand in and I talked to my gaffer and I said, look, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions because I've never done this before and I don't want to fuck this up. So you're going to have to deal with a lot of phone calls from me and references and arrows to things. And I remember just standing there and like really feeling liberated that just if I didn't know something, cool, now I do, you know? And so it wasn't so, like I didn't kick myself for not knowing something or having not seen something coming, and nothing was so bad because my gaffer's wonderful too, but like I really enjoyed that process to know that okay, I've done that now and just done that just for myself, even let alone the project.
Sorry, may I ask, I asked about camera and lens. Yes.
So, but ask the question again then.
What is your favorite setup, camera plus lenses, which you used from the last project?
Wide angle close. I love a 35 mil. On this one, on my last job, 21 Atlas 21 mil was great. I'm done now.
I had a very different answer lined up. So, my favorite setup, you know, it's kind of the same one. It was a zoom. I'm a big fan of zooms now, and we did a setup where someone falls asleep in their car, and we added a zoom on the day, which became messy because the operator had to slide the camera and pan it, and then I had to operate the zoom, so it had to be in tandem, which took a couple takes. Yeah, and the camera just slowly pans across to a house, and the door opens, and something comes out of it, and then has to walk all the way across the yard, and you land back on the person asleep in the car, and then you feel the car shake and the door close, and you realize whatever came out of the house is now in the car. And it was a 3-minute oneer, and it was one of those ones where everyone screams once you get like a good take, like take 10, we did it, and then we reviewed it, and we're like, we have to go again. But it was great. It was one of those like hero moments. I mean, it's very silly to that you have a whole crew actively like screaming like little kids, but it was fun because it's like a, yeah. So yeah, zooms.
Zooms, man, they work. My last movie was Alexa 35 and K35s, but we got this 10 mil, which I think was maybe a Canon FD. And when I tested it and I showed the director, we had that emotional response of like, this lens is cool, but what are we going to use it for? And so we carried it, and the whole time we were like, we're going to figure it out. It's just going to come to us. And it did. And we used it a few times. And yeah, that was great.
All right. Thank you all so much for coming, and thank you all so much for coming.
Thanks, guys.